This is Affinity Talks Gospel podcast, and my name is Graham Nicholls.
And I'm Lizzie Harewood, and we're joined today by Martin Dickson from Wycliffe Bible Translators. Now, Martin, is it Wycliffe or Wycliffe? Because I noticed, Graham, you were saying
I did
both.
both just now, yeah.
Wycliffe is what I know it as. So yeah, Wycliffe Bible Translators.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have said.
Yeah. And you've been there a little while. Tell us a little bit about yourself, particularly kind of what you were up to before you were there.
Yeah, so I joined Wycliffe in September. Before that, I'd spent about 11 years with an organisation called Safe Families. Recently merged with Safe Families and Home for Good. So Safe Families was about recruiting and training local volunteers from Christian churches to support families, and saw some massive impacts on families as a result of that work. Prior to that, I'd spent 10 years with Youth for Christ. So I was a centre director in the Whittle, where it's home for me, and just kind of really enjoyed that as well. So I've always been involved in kind of church engagement, church mission, faith sector work, but slightly different flavors of it for the last few years.
Yeah, I mean,
And
this new job seems very different. Sorry, Lizzie, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, what is your precise role with Wycliffe?
So I'm director for churches. Uh, so it's a very similar role to what I was doing with, say, families, a very different mission. All surrounding church engagement. So my real passion is about releasing the potential in the church, or playing a role in releasing the potential in the church. And I love the church. I love the local church, and I see massive potential in it for a whole load of things. And the privileges of the roles I've always been in is I've got to play a role in that, which is, yeah, it's wonderful, really, and I'm grateful to God for the opportunity.
What about your own experience of becoming a Christian? Where and how was that?
Brought up in a Christian home. My dad worked for Youth for Christ when I was growing up, and had led some
Right.
church stuff. Got my first Bible off an OM ship when it came into Birkenhead, and I think I was 12 years old, and I think it was the Doulos came in. So
hmm
I went and got a Bible, and it was one of remember the Good News Bible with all the pictures in it? I loved it. Um, Definitely had a sense, a belief, I suppose it would be, that of the death and resurrection of Jesus for the forgiveness of my sins, and the need for a personal relationship. Um, but it was belief, and it probably didn't become faith until I was kind of a late teen. I really moved away from faith. I moved away from church. I got frustrated and fed up with it. But I had a real encounter with God when I was 18 that really brought me back strong. And at that point made a commitment that this was going to be what life was going to be about. And that again took a further step up when I joined Youth for Christ. Each year at the Youth for Christ conference, they pray the Methodist Covenant prayer. I don't know if you know of it, but really very powerful. It starts, I'm no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Rank me with whom you will. And goes on from there. And praying that prayer and really meaning it, I think, had a radical impact on my life, and took me into some incredible adventures with God.
So, what led you to Wycliffe then? Because well, although obviously you're engaging with the church, you're serving the church, you're enabling the church to serve sort of parachurch ministries. What led you in particular to Wycliffe?
Uh, in the kind of the back end of my time with Safe Families, so we built Safe Families. There was a leadership team of us who built Safe Families from probably about 20 staff members up to nearly 250 once we'd done the merge. It was founded by Peter Vardy. So Peter Vardy, a name you'll know, and our first chief exec, Keith Danby, and we'd taken it. We'd done some amazing stuff, really, with big funding from government, but Peter's support as well, and others. Um, Took it from there, and as I say, we'd grown. We had a new chief exec and grown it to 250 with the merge. We were starting to look at the next 10 years of growth and development, and I felt that it's hard to describe it. It was almost like the anointing had gone for the next 10 years. Like I knew that I was in the right place at the right time. and yet reached a point where it didn't feel like the right place anymore. Um, and there was a sense of grief in that because I loved the work, I loved my colleagues,
Mm,
I loved what we were doing, and yet that sense of in my spirit it was no longer mine to take forward.
Mm.
Um, and do you know what? The Sean who's come in and has taken the role on that I'd left is just going to be amazing for it and is the right person for the right time. So absolutely God was in it, and this is the right time for me for Wycliffe, I believe. So
Mm. Mm.
yeah. So for people who might not know, I think many people would who'd be listening to this, but just broadly, what does Wycliffe do?
yeah. So Wycliffe partners with local people all over the globe uh, to see Bible translation. If you would imagine what it would be like to lead a church or personal discipleship or evangelism or loads of the things that we take for granted in the UK church and our own faith, what would it be like to try and do those things without having the Bible in your own language? Um, I think people think that everybody in the world's heard of John 3:16. It's not the case.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there are over 550 languages globally where there is no scripture whatsoever. And so evangelism, church planting, discipleship, personal discipleship, that is
Mm.
extremely difficult. Um, Wycliffe Bible Translators is working to combat that.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I have a little anecdote which I often trot out on these occasions, but it was very compelling to me. We had a Chinese lady who came to us with her husband in our church. She's a believer and he was not.
Mhm.
And they came to everything because she was a believer. She wanted her husband to come to faith too. And they came to every kind of meeting. They were, I think I did evangelistic courses with him and everything else. And after a while, they went away to a Chinese speaking, I can't remember if it was Cantonese or Mandarin they were speaking, but whichever was their heart language. And they went away for a weekend, and he became a Christian. And I was a bit disgruntled because I thought we put so much work into you, man, and you then go away and you have one gospel message in your heart language, and you're converted. Now I know there are many people who get converted in second languages, but it was very illustrative to me of the fact that. Particularly if you're at a stretch in English, where when you hear the gospel in your heart language, it has a different kind of impact. And
Mm.
obviously, for lots of people you're translating for, they don't even have a second language that they're stretching to. So
Mhm.
anyway, I share that anecdote for what it's worth. It
Graham,
was,
I mean, sorry to butt in there, but I'm sure the Lord was using you to prime that man. So he was still getting the seeds, but perhaps there was just something in that moment. God used that heart language for something
yeah,
to click.
absolutely. And you know, he went on to be a great person in the church, and we still have ongoing contact with him now. He's back in a dangerous situation, actually. So you know, the outcome has been really good. So I'm very grateful, and I wasn't really disgruntled. It was more. It was. I thought this heart language is really a thing.
Mhm.
Mm.
It
And,
really is.
and you
Yeah.
can't take it for granted. I've just been at a little kind of mini international gathering where everyone's speaking in English, and you just take for granted that you can kind of get away with that, across Europe, sort of thing. So anyway, enough about me talking about my anecdotes. So,
Think about
Why
think
does
about
it
the
matter?
well, think about the birth of the church, the day of Pentecost.
yeah,
Spirit falls, and it wasn't that everybody understood one language; everybody heard in their own language.
yes,
So right from the birth of the church, there's something special happening when people hear the gospel in their own language, um, and it spans out from there. I've just come back from Uganda actually, where working with two people groups who've got New Testaments in their own language, and the power of it and the power they describe of God spoke to me in my language and the
mm,
dignity that gives. But it makes it easy to engage with God. So if you're trying to engage with God through the Bible in a
mm,
different language, it actually means it's actually hard. It's an effort when you've got it in your own language and it's explained and the meaning is in your own language. Meaning's a really interesting thing you might want to ask me about because when it's in your own language and in your own culture, the meaning of it is different because it's culturally meaningful. So imagine, for an example, passages where in one place it might be that we describe Jesus as our anchor, so Jesus the anchor for our hope. What if you live in a nomadic tribe in the desert where you've never seen a ship? What's an anchor?
Yeah.
And in that culture, washed white as snow. It's never snowed. It's meaningless. So you could translate the word, but the word doesn't mean anything.
So how do you navigate that? Because surely you don't want to change what the Bible says, but yet how can you use a metaphor that actually makes sense to someone?
Well, what's important is what the Bible means.
Mm,
And there's some choices to be made about the type of translation. So
Mm,
we're looking for three things: accuracy. So it's got to be accurate, and for some that would mean word for word accuracy. Um, we're much more about the meaning of those passages. So when somebody was inspired by God to write that, what did they mean when they wrote that? So
mm.
accuracy, the beauty of it. So the poetic language, it's beautiful, and that beauty conveys something of God. So accuracy, beauty, clarity. Is it clear? Does it make sense? So you could get an accurate word and it sounds beautiful and flows, but it doesn't make any sense to anybody. So that's got to be dealt with. And then there's a dignity element to it as well. So there are words where if you had the exact translation, those words aren't dignified words in that language. So you've got to get all four pieces right now.
That's that's interesting.
Fascinating, yeah.
Would that link to kind of some things that might be seen as unacceptable then in some cultures to mention or to talk about?
Well, there's if even in our NIV Bible, if we directly translated some of the words that we now read, it could potentially cause offense to us. So, children who have no father, you can imagine the word that would be
Yeah.
used.
Yeah.
Um, so it's that sort of thing going on. Um,
I
yeah,
know my husband often talks about when Paul's expressing the things that he used to consider important. He says he now considers them to be literally dung, as
yes,
in like excrement. And he said, but obviously we wouldn't use that word. So I suppose that could be one example. I think,
and yeah, and the word's stronger than dung because he's trying to make a very important point. It's an extreme language
yeah,
because it's extreme. That's
yeah,
how I see it now.
yeah.
yeah.
So you bring in
So
the dignity.
yeah.
It's
So
with
that's
the
about
key
good
words
about
though.
your. Go on,
Sorry.
you say.
So they'll start and when they're doing the translation. This is local people, so there's consultants who are helping local people. It's not kind of white savior stuff coming in and we're doing it for you, perhaps in the way that it used to be done. So they start to look at what we call key terms. So what does redemption mean in a culture where there's no such thing as redemption, salvation, forgiveness, those sort of Jesus? What do they mean? And how do you express those? So I find it fascinating.
Mm. Scale it for us a little bit. You mentioned a number, but it kind of went over my head in terms of people groups that don't have the Bible in their own heart language, their sort of mother tongue.
Yeah, this is an exciting story. 2 years ago, 1,200 languages there or thereabouts with no scripture whatsoever. Last year, over 900 languages, no scripture whatsoever. This year, 550 with no languages. So it's coming down.
Wow.
Um, yes. So there's this is the beauty of it. So there's a finish line. There's an end in sight.
Yeah.
Why
And
is it has hit accelerated recently?
uh, there's more people doing it. There's a little bit of help, although not massively, from AI. The church is getting behind it. The churches in the UK and the US are really seeing this as important, and other places as well, of course. People are investing in it, and when there's investment in it, we can start to see it. So,
We have a lady that we support in our church who has
mm,
just finished her kind of life's project in
yeah,
Chad. She went out with
yes, yeah,
Wycliffe,
yeah, yeah,
um, and she's back in the UK now, and she helped. I'm not entirely sure how much she was involved in translating, but she was involved in translating the Bible or parts of the Bible into Chadian Arabic, and I imagine that when you have some sort of base language to work from. Obviously, I know that you would work to ensure that you don't just sort of pilfer bits of Arabic that aren't then, you know, um, aren't inaccurate in another form of Arabic. But it can be, I suppose, useful to have sort of language roots that share similarities. Or do you, yeah, I mean, what is the process? How do you go about translating? It must be a very long process if you have to kind of interact with people groups and then find some kind of written language. I suppose there will be some languages that are already written down, but if there's no written language, it must be an incredibly long process.
We have folks in our team who design language. So I mean, audio stuff's really helpful now. So you don't need a written language in lots of places.
Yeah.
In some places they really want it. It gives such dignity to have your language written. That was some of what we saw in Uganda. Um, yeah, there's various processes. I heard one story about there was a place where they wanted a written Bible, but there was no written language. And so they got written languages from areas around the kind of circumference of that place and took that because they wanted the language to look like those languages,
Mm.
but it was a new language. So they kind of design it to look like the other languages in the area. Just it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Um,
What do you tend to translate from? So, because presumably, if you translate, say you took, for example, a good English translation, you could imagine many people could go out there and do that work. But in order to go and help a, a, a people group translate from Greek and Hebrew, that's a higher level challenge. So what do you translate from?
what what gives you the impression it's a higher challenge? If they don't know English, what difference does it make where they start?
True enough, but I suppose the person who's the enabler has to be competent in those
So
languages. I think that's my point, really.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
So imagine the translators at a desk and they've got their computer in front of them and they've got a screen and on the
yeah,
screen they've got Hebrew, they've got Greek, and they can click into each of those words and understand what each of those words might translate as. They've also got a couple of English versions as well. And
yes,
so they're translating directly from the original language,
yeah,
um, but with help to do that.
yeah. No, yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about the use of AI because this intrigues me. How is that utilized? And is it something that's making your life easier? Does it perhaps have any unforeseen consequences as well?
Um, it's a helpful tool in a suite of tools.
Mm.
And any tool comes with things that are good about it and things that are not so good about it. Um, AI needs training. So if there's no written language to start with, what it can't do anything because
Yeah.
it's nothing to train it on. Um, if you're able to if you're able to train with some existing materials, um, then it does accelerate slightly at the moment, and there's different tools being used for that. Um, it's a kind of a whole new world, and so I'm not well versed in the detail of it, but it is helpful. But it's
Mm,
always going to need a human to read it, and there are multiple stages of this where the translation happens, then it's taken into the community, and the community are asked what this means to you, and then it comes back, and then the various stages, and then final stages that is that somebody maybe not even a Christian actually would read sections of it to a consultant and describe what they mean so the consultants can understand that, well, actually, yes, they've conveyed the meaning of that passage as
Mm.
we believe it was meant to be conveyed. So it's
Mm.
about a 12 stage process. It depends on where it's being done.
there's loads of questions about that, but I'm going to jump back to the scaling question just for a sec
Yeah,
to say if the numbers come down and there's, do you say 900 maybe people groups?
550 languages now.
550
Yeah.
languages. Okay, perhaps it was 900 the year before or something.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
The how many people does that represent?
It's 20% of the world's population, so one in five. It's 1.5 billion people.
still doesn't have it in their own language.
It's I had no idea when I started. It's shocking, isn't it? You think it's done?
Wow. Wow.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, that's good that I asked that question. One in five still don't have it in their own heart language. And uh, when you translate, is it because a Christian who's of that people group sort of says, we need a translation, or is it kind of evangelistic in a sense that, I don't know, an evangelist is in that area and could really do with the Bible in their language that they're trying to witness to? Yeah, where do the kind of requests come from, as it were?
Both. So where churches are being planted in new areas, they're desperate for a Bible. Well, they're desperate for anything. Give us a verse, give us a New Testament, give us
Mm,
anything. Um, and it often starts with some Bible stories from the New Testament, and then goes from there's different levels of translation depending on the meaning, which I can talk about another
yes.
time if it's helpful. So, or it could be that could be there's a mission organization. Um, we're looking to do a campaign later on in this year for unreached people groups. So
Mm,
how do you reach people with the gospel if there's no gospel in their language?
Mm.
It's virtually impossible. So
And, and when you translate sections, say you translate some, I don't know, some parables or whatever it is you would start with, I don't know, part of one of the gospels, would you release that and say print copies of that, or would you wait until, say, there's a whole New Testament
well,
until that goes into kind of circulation?
we're working with 90 languages just at the moment. Many of those, there's no way we could release them because it's seriously risky.
Sure.
So most of the names of the projects that I know and most of the names of the people working on them are not the real names and not the real people.
Yeah.
So the idea that you would print something on paper and release it was just it simply couldn't happen.
Yeah.
But there's underground printing going on. Um, so there's the multiple ways. And one of the brilliant stories I heard recently was that the translation was recorded onto somebody's phone, and he brought his whole family together, and they sat and listened to the Gospel of Mark on his phone as a family. And so it's just it's beautiful
Yeah.
ways of doing it, really. Uh, yeah, and you're right. It starts with possibly a gospel or even just a story.
Yeah.
Mark Road Project in Nigeria, they gather people from the community and translate one Bible story. And then the ones who show real interest in that, then encourage them actually trained. And actually, some of them may even get masters in it. They're trained to begin translating gospel. And so the Book of Esther is way more easy to translate than the Book of Revelation because it's a narrative story. It's
yeah.
about meaning.
Yeah.
Um, do you, as in Wycliffe, do the kind of gospel work that goes with the translation, or do you kind of stay in a lane of we're doing the technical stuff, someone else is driving the kind of gospel stuff?
Uh, there's a good analogy about kind of digging wells. You dig a well and put a hand pump in it, and if you don't teach anyone how to use the hand pump, the well's useless.
Yeah,
So it's no good that we would translate a Bible and then not engage in Bible engagement.
right.
Uh, now, so Wycliffe are not doing that. This is about empowering local people on the ground
Yeah,
to do the work. We are enabling the church in the UK to support people who are doing this work for themselves overseas.
yes.
And so it's them sharing the gospel, it's them doing the evangelism, it's them planting the churches. So yes, we're involved, and yes, we support that. We don't deliver that.
Mm.
No, presumably though, you come across, you got your kind of technical expert who's trying to help the local team translating.
Mm.
You may well, I suppose, identify needs where there's sort of training needs, or you can maybe help them with a particular project, and maybe sometimes make that need known, I suppose, across your supporter base.
Well, so there's a project in where can I point it to pick it down? Let's say Asia. There's a
Yeah.
project in Asia, and literacy is very very low. And so if you want people to engage with the Bible, you've got to engage literacy.
Mm,
Um, But we can't just announce that we're going to do Bible translation in this area for obvious reasons.
mm,
Um, so the way forward then was to launch preschools. So start to teach children how to read. When you teach the children how to read and then teach them to read the Bible, they go home and read that to their parents.
Right.
So there's an example of what you're describing. So we
Yeah. Yeah.
support the
Mm,
preschools, and there's 12 of them now.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
And that's copying the pattern that happened in the UK. Precisely. This is what happened back in the time of the social reformers, back in the 1700s and the Victorian era. That's exactly what happened. The church would teach children to read and write on a Sunday whilst the kids were in the fields or down the pits. They would be doing that during the week, Monday to Saturday. And on the
mm,
Sunday, they would go to Sunday school, learn to read and write through the Bible. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah.
yeah, yeah. But Thomas Guthrie and those guys doing it up in Scotland, exactly that sort of
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and in terms of parts of the world that are most bereft, where would you say the biggest need is?
Uh,
all the
Good
places you
question.
can't mention.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, no.
that's why I'm pausing. Yeah.
I can see
Um,
that. You can be general, sort of
Yeah,
big picture continent kind
yeah.
of thing.
Africa and Asia.
Yeah.
Africa and Asia, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, there's also stuff happening in Eastern Europe. We've got some brilliant projects with the Romani people
yeah.
in Romania,
Mm,
and then pushing into Albania, and there's some root languages that are working out there. So, um,
mm,
lots of, and you think there's 550 languages. There's lots of them all over the place. Yeah.
sure.
Um, there are different national Wycliffes though all supporting the work. So we're particularly focused in um, Romania, Asia, and Africa.
Mm, mm. Okay.
There's always new things to discover. I happened to be meeting some people this week, and I didn't realize there's a whole people group in the north of Scandinavia with their own language, which kind of butt on to both Sweden, Norway, sorry, Norway, Sweden, and then Finland. But there's this little group of people that are kind of a bit like the Eskimos on the American continent, but have their own native language and customs and everything. So
Mm,
you sort of suddenly discover these sort of people groups you didn't even I had never even heard that there was.
yeah.
Mm,
Perhaps
mm.
you knew that already, Lizzie, because you're well educated. But
No, no, I didn't.
no, there's a bunch of people out there with their own language, own
Yeah.
language and culture, and this kind of sort of syncretistic, as it was described to me, kind of religion with bits of everything, but
Mm,
mostly sort of pagan worship sort of stuff.
mm,
Mm.
So yeah, so when you finish in Asia, you can go up to Scandinavia, which is not too far for you from the UK.
yeah, absolutely. There may well be stuff happening up there. I don't know it off the top of my head, but yeah, perhaps there's stuff happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes they're quite isolated, aren't they? A bit like some tribes in the Amazon where it's
Mm,
not like they're doing a lot of trade or
yeah.
interaction with the rest of the world. So
Yeah.
reaching them is a particular effort.
Yeah.
I did. So this is a one of these kind of interesting facts. I went and spent a summer in Argentina with a people group called the Wichi tribe in northern Argentina, and Wycliffe Bible Translators were working with them when I was
Okay.
there,
Yeah.
translating parts of the New Testament there because they and really starting from scratch because they had um,
Yeah.
only recently just started to transcribe a written language. And but then they had to work with locals who largely spoke Spanish Christians,
Mm,
who then had to learn Witchy, and then
yeah.
it was just a very long and arduous process. But the Witchy people were becoming Christians,
Okay.
and yeah, it was an absolutely fascinating experience being around them. But in terms of working with Wycliffe, um, I guess do you look for folks who are very talented when it comes to learning languages and being able to grasp languages, or can you just come in having absolutely no aptitude whatsoever?
It depends what role you want to do. So we employed linguists and consultants and people who can design languages. Um, but overseas, we employ security guards to look after people and people who can drive and people like me who do church engagement. So there's a whole range of things really.
Yeah.
And lots of the folks who are doing that work are actually members. They're not employed.
Yeah.
So members is a kind of the pseudonym from missionaries.
Mm.
Yeah.
So there's 200 members. Interestingly, lots of those are in the UK now rather than overseas because you don't need to be overseas to do the consultancy work.
Mm.
Gone are the days where we would send somebody out to some place and they'd spend 10 years learning the language and then start to translate. It's just inefficient. There's people out there who already speak the language.
Yeah.
Let's help them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, as we kind of come to an end, it'd be good if you kind of shared anything that was public that we could pray about, and just any particular projects you're kind of involved in. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, so there's a couple of big, I'll share a couple of big projects. So I imagine many of your folks would be from FIEC churches. So we're
Yeah.
working on a big FIEC project. We're Rising Lights. We've got a video we're showing at Rising Lights and a copy. We have a called out here actually called Words for Life. And this time it's got a story of a church leader in a place. I nearly said it. We'll say it then. So we've got the opportunity to share more. So we raised that at the leaders conference and now at Rising Lights. So we're really asking people to support that prayerfully and financially. Of course, it costs money to do translation. So that's called the Waldo Project pseudonym, and so that's a big project that's happening at the moment. We're working with New Wine on a project called Mark Road, which is Nigeria. So there's 60 language groups with no translation in Nigeria. We're working with 40 of them over the next 4 years, 10 a year. So there's a big project there. There's about 90 we're working on at the moment.
I'm amazed at how much you can do, how many languages you're able to kind of have going concurrently. And I guess that's you've just learned to do this in a much more efficient, effective way, haven't you? As you say, rather than necessarily going and living and learning and then transcribing and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's the efficiency of having consultants who can work on
yeah,
multiple projects with local people.
yeah.
And what sort of in general should people be praying for when they've got you in mind? I'll allow you contact details in a minute, so don't panic.
Yeah, sure. Um, well, so some of the folks who do the translation work are in danger. They're in unreached areas. They're in risky areas. So there's always a prayer for safety for them.
Yeah.
And the typical stuff that folks in those areas might need, the healthcare and the financial support they need. There's always that happening.
Mm.
So we would always really much value prayers for that. Um,
Mhm.
there are the staff team in the UK. I mean, there's lots of work, and it's hard work, but it's enjoyable, and it's a privilege, but it's work,
Yeah.
and all of what it means for that. So kind of health and vitality for our team in this country.
Mm.
And really the big prayer point is just the continued acceleration of this work.
Yes.
Um, the idea that there is a finish line in sight that we could hit and the greatest barrier to world evangelism and mission would be gone, I just think is so exciting. So churches praying into that.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I need finances to follow prayers because
Yeah.
and I want people to pray for the money to come in.
Yeah.
Um, I have no awkwardness asking for that because that's what's making it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
for yourself, be great to just give contact details, not contact details, but website details, and presumably you or one of your partners is willing to visit churches if they want to know more.
Absolutely, yeah. We would love to visit churches and speak well of this work and share some of the impact
Yeah.
stories. Yeah,
Yeah. And the website?
Wycliffe.co.uk. Let me just check. I'm saying co.uk. Let me just org.uk. Good job, I checked.
Yeah.
Wycliffe.org.uk. Forgive me. Yeah,
Yeah. Wycliffe.org.uk.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
Brilliant.
That's really good. Thank you very much for your time today. That's a very sobering thought. One in five
Mm, mm.
still unreached with the Bible in their own language. So we can pray about that. So thank you very
Yeah.
much for your time, Martin.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity to chat. Yeah, I'm really grateful.
Thank you so much for listening to Affinity Talks Gospel podcast. Affinity is a network of evangelical churches and Christian organizations working together sharing stories in order to encourage and equip God's people to preach and live the gospel in this generation. If you're interested in supporting this ministry, we'd love you to join us. Just head over to affinity.org.uk/join to find out more. And we look forward to catching up with you in the next episode of Affinity Talks Gospel.